You're listening to the NABS Now podcast.
Well, welcome to the NABS Now podcast. I am Noah Carver, and the voice you are about to hear is not that of Akliesia Teshome. Don't worry, she has not disappeared. But I would like to introduce you to our newest host, Selene Monjaraz. Hello, Selene. Welcome to the program. And how about you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, where you study, and how you're involved in NABS and your student division?
Hello. So I'm originally from Tennessee, but I moved to Connecticut for university. I'm currently studying psychology at Wesleyan University, and I'm involved in a few things, a cappella. I'm on a few advisory boards as well, do some campus work here and there, generally try to stay involved as a student. And as for how I am affiliated with NFB, I was a finalist for the NFB scholarship in 2022. So I got connected with NABS and to my future affiliate of Connecticut. So I now serve as the vice president of CTABS, which is the state division of NABS, and I'm also an at-large member.
Cool. Awesome. All right, real talk here. What did you do over your Christmas vacation, winter break?
Ooh, Christmas vacation. I actually went home to see my family because I didn't do that over fall break, and I dragged the boyfriend with me. I actually did, because last year we went to his family, so I dragged him to mine, and they did not rip him apart as he anticipated. And we had good food.
Awesome. Okay, so he survived then, yes? He survived to tell the tale.
He did, thankfully.
Awesome. Well, as it would happen, I did the same thing, funnily enough. I went off after New Year's and spent some time with my girlfriend and her family, and it was very lovely. And that totally was not planned because this episode is called Love is Blind. And today we have four fantastic panelists here to talk to us about their relationships and how they navigate them. So we're going to go around the horn, and y'all can introduce yourselves, a little bit about where you're from and how you're involved, if you are involved with NABS or NFB, and yeah, just say a few words. So let's start with Tim and Juhi.
Ladies first.
I knew he was going to do that. Hi, my name is Juhi Narula. I am from Maryland, and I am not involved with NABS, but I was, when I was a student, involved with our state division here in Maryland. I was the secretary and then the VP for a good amount of years, and now I run our young adults group as well as being the new scholarship chair for Maryland.
Super cool. Don't you have like a cool job at BISM too?
Oh, you want me to do the whole shebang? Yes.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I also work at Blind Industries and Services of Maryland as their youth programs manager. So I essentially run all of the programs that we have for blind youth in Maryland.
Awesome.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Olukanni, and I am involved in NABS in the sense of being a part of their TikTok committee, where we help get them TikToks out there, which is really, really fun. So getting a chance to work with James and Con Lee, really, really good time. Let's see, I'm currently attending Georgia Gwinnett College, getting my degree in marketing, trying to get a job in tech sales. While I do that during the day, the ultimate dream is to become the greatest stand-up comedian ever. And that's about it on me. I live in Georgia, by the way, so yeah.
Awesome. Super cool. All right. And Seyoon and Anneliese.
I'm going to go ahead and go first. So my greetings to my seasoned listeners, because I am back in the guest speaker presenter sense. So happy to be back to the NABS Now podcast. I am watching the activities of NABS as a former student, so love seeing that, and certainly this podcast as well. So thanks for having me. As far as the Federation hat, I serve on the National Federation of the Blind in Missouri as one of the board member, and I think that's it.
What do you do? You're no longer a student? What do you do now?
Life after college. So I've accepted a position as a senior vocational rehabilitation counselor with the State of Missouri Department of Social Services.
Woo-hoo. Sweet.
Hi, I'm Anneliese. I recently joined the Lewis and Clark chapter with the NFB of Missouri. I've gone to some conventions and Washington seminar. I'm currently a junior at St. Louis University pursuing communications, but I'm not sure really what I want to do yet with that degree. So we'll see what happens.
Hey, communications! Super cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, so now that everyone knows a little bit about everyone, it's question time. So, Selene, start us off.
Absolutely. Well, if we're going to talk about your relationships, we got to figure out how you met. So let's start with Anneliese and Seyoon. How did you two meet?
So, I want to take a step back to last summer. So I was sort of poking around different dating apps. Obviously, there's some big ones out there. Certainly, there's Tinder, there's Bumble. I was actually on Hinge. So I was just sort of riding the wave. I've completed my profile. I asked some advice from a couple folks, asked what they thought, and I was sort of experimenting with the app and its capabilities. It is a very accessible app. But then after really just spending some time with it, I came across her profile and I was intrigued, you know. She had a lot of fun prompts. One of which I remember was I had to pick a date idea, which was to go to a place here in St. Louis. There's a place called a Loop. There's a lot of fun restaurants there, really fun attractions. There's a Loop trolley as well, so that's always really fun. And spending some time at Forest Park and things like that. So I had to actually vote it on one of her prompts. And then I was just that interactivity was actually what really got us connected. So I'm gonna stop talking now so she could share a little history that I might not even know.
I mean, you kind of know everything because you were there, but I mean, the one thing I remember was you said hey, and I said hey, and then you texted after that, hey, can you like describe what you look like? And then I said, what? Why can't you just look at my photos? They're on my profile. And
Yep.
then I think I said that to him. I said, oh, well, you can see in my photos or something. He said, well, actually, I'm blind. And then I felt like an idiot for a second, that knock in your head moment when you're like, oh no, I feel like an idiot now, but I just remember that. And then I said, oh yeah, I have brown hair. I didn't really know how to describe myself before. I've never been asked that. That's like the one big moment I remember from us meeting.
Why don't you share some of your discovery then?
Oh my gosh, that could be a whole podcast in itself of my dating life. I mean, I saw your profile and I was like, there's something different I see in this man compared to other men.
That is such a lovely story. I love it. How about Tim and Juhi?
So I would say back in the dark ages of 2020, where it was the pandemic time, we had all basically these virtual calls that are happening everywhere. You know, Minnesota was doing it, Georgia was doing it, and Maryland was doing it. And so the student division of Maryland was doing these chill hour calls. And so, I was bored at home and I was like, well, the Maryland student division is hosting a chill hour call. Let me hop on and see what's going on. And so I hopped on and I was just, interacting with everyone as you do. And that is where we first interacted. I heard this wonderful voice and I was like, who is that? And we first just started out as friends. And eventually I started to become not just interested, because she is interesting, but interested with the ED, And after that, we just started to get closer and closer before we became an item. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what he said, there's not much I can add to that. I think, well, the funny thing is, one, he did not like my voice. So I'm going to say that because he lied on air. He tried hiding it, but I remember. But no, we became friends, and I think we were friends for 3 years before ending up becoming an item. So yeah, it was a really cool kind of progression from friends to partners.
We are living in the digital age, truly.
Sweet. Awesome. Super cool. All right. So, one more question now. So, what has been the highlight of your relationship or brought you closer over the past year? And we'll start with Juhi and Tim.
I will go first again if he's okay with that.
Go for it.
All right, cool. So I would say my highlight was, now keep in mind this was supposed to be a birthday gift for her, but it happened roughly a month after her birthday. But that's how you surprise them, right, guys? And so I wanted to surprise her by coming to Maryland without her knowing, right? So I had her best friend in the world in on it, and we were, plotting. And we were like, okay, like how do we make sure Juhi stays in Maryland? Because Juhi be moving, like she'd be traveling, she'd be going everywhere. So it's hard to catch her, you know? And so I made, he was like, I got it, man. I'll make sure she's in Maryland. He did this thing, and of course, on the day of reckoning, I missed my flight, and it became a whole thing to get there after that. But eventually, I did get there. And the highlight for my relationship with her so far, and there are many highlights, but this is probably the creme a la creme right now, was just her reaction when I finally went in through the door. She was asleep. She was asleep on the couch. And I just said, hey. And she woke up. She was just staring at me like I was as if like I was like a ghost. I don't know. And she was just so shocked that I was there. And it was wonderful. And her best friend was just in the background saying, like, we tricked her, we surprised her. She had no idea. Like, we got it like that. And she was just confused. Like it was perfect. And she was so surprised. And it was amazing. And yeah.
That's so sweet. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same one, so I'm kind of stuck. But I'll say another one. Honestly, I mean Tim's like a very big surprise guy, and I like when growing up always wanted to be surprised, but no one ever like would surprise me. And so honestly, like another highlight is he pulled the surprise act again, and for some reason the first time I kind of was catching on because he missed his flight. So we're iPhone users, so when his like text that I sent him went into a text message, I was like, it only does that when he's flying. So what's happening? And so like that first time he surprised me, I was like, something's going on. But the second time, it was a complete shock, and he actually was in Baltimore already, but at a leadership seminar related to NFB. But he came the night before the conference actually started and surprised me in my apartment. I was asleep, and he has access to my apartment, so he came in and like surprised me while I was asleep. And I legit thought it was my cat at first because he just like came and gave me a hug. And I woke up being like, why is my cat on top of me right now? And then I was like, oh, and he said like hi, and his voice not being a tiny meow shook me awake. But it was like those kind of moments where you just get surprised, and with long distance, everything's so planned, like when we're gonna meet and which weekends we're gonna be spending together. And so to have something that's not planned and you get like a whole weekend of just like bonus Tim time, it was awesome.
I'm gonna pull a Tim and then be a good gentleman and then let my lady go first.
Okay, so I'm trying to think. This is kind of hard because I also think traveling has been something that's brought us together because one of the first times, no, the first time we traveled together was to Washington seminar last year. And I've never been in a room with so many blind people before. I didn't know what to think. It was just canes and guide dogs. But I think part of that traveling experience really brought us together because I've never traveled with someone who's blind. So watching how you take Kaplan through security is different. And the whole way that I would travel if it was me and my mom, it was very different with the perspective, but I think that's yeah. Now I'll let my man go.
Well, the Washington seminar was certainly cool, but we're gonna stir up the pot, and then I want to talk about the second vacation that we take it over our collectively shared spring break at the time because I was finishing my grad school. So our spring break, we planned on a St. Patrick's sort of a weekend trip to Chicago. And since we are in St. Louis, Chicago is a pretty close enough but far away from home destination for us. My guide dog ingested some chocolate. We decided to travel without Kaplan just to have some couple of time, and that's nothing against me choosing to leave my guide dog behind. Absolutely adore and love him, but he was staying with my parents because they have offered to watch him for the couple days, and he actually ingested some chocolate. So the night before we were supposed to catch the train, I was in the dog emergency with her and my folks, and then we just had to just sort of watch him, and he was really sick for the next couple of days. So that was a whole thing. That being said, Chicago was a lot of fun. I think we really learned about each other and what type of attractions and lifestyle really that we seek to have. One of the huge common things that we have is we are both a very city people. Anneliese was actually really open to taking public transit, so even though I am a blind traveler, which at the point I had my cane, I was very much in charge of planning our trips. What trains are we taking, what buses we're taking, and I've been to Chicago enough times to where I became a lot more familiar with their public transit system, which is just phenomenal. And that experience and then going to the pier, many lots of big destinations. There's the Starbucks roasteries. There's a couple of places that I could think of on top of my head, but I think just spending a couple days out of town with your partner, it really teaches you a lot of lessons. We've actually, on our Amtrak trip on the way to Chicago, we encountered a tornado.
Oh my gosh, that was so scary. I thought we were going to be taken away in a tornado.
The train was actually moving away from the tornado, but then the tornado caught up to the location of the train. They have instructed our Amtrak train in particular to come to a halt until we're clear. That's a pretty scary time, even though we are both from the Midwest. We lived in the Midwest for a very long time. And when you're on the move and not in a stable building, to be chased by a tornado is pretty wild stuff. But
it's like the Wizard of Oz going on over here.
Yeah, no kidding. We have encountered that on the way, and the emotions were high, but then you sort of stick together. But yeah, that really was a highlight for me. It was so meaningful. It was a lot of fun. We shopped a lot.
You're calling us out on our spending habits.
Yeah, we just went on a little bit of shopping spree. We walked around a magnificent mile, then been to a lot of flagship stores, and it wouldn't be with me without going to the Apple store there too. So just putting it in there.
Wow, it sounds like you two have a lot of fun. Actually, all four of you have a lot of fun traveling back and forth, doing all these amazing things. And I love that it has been such a fulfilling experience for everyone. But of course, every relationship has its ups and downs. So I want to get into, have you guys had any rough patches that you had to smooth out, and did disability play a part in that happening? How did you navigate that?
I guess I'll do a couple. I mean, the first one I kind of alluded to, but just long distance is always a fun kind of process and experience to go through. And if anyone's had a conversation with me about relationships, I'm always the first to be like, don't do long distance, just because I personally don't vibe with the long distance relationships. But I will say Tim kind of got me into a space where long distance isn't as bad as it still sucks, but it's not as bad as it could be. It's just a lot of communication. So kind of getting used to, planning your trips when you guys are going to see each other so far in advance, and the process of making sure that you're communicating verbally about everything that's going on, and when there are arguments or disagreements, how you can handle that on the phone in the best way possible versus when you're in person with each other. The dynamics are just so different, and I think working through that together has been one of the main bumps in just figuring out, all right, how can we best support each other, which is the second thing, is just figuring out how both of us can help each other in the best way possible. I think both of us give and receive help in very different ways. And so just being able to communicate with each other and get to a point where we both feel comfortable being vulnerable, which is always a really hard thing to do with anyone, whether it's your friend or your kind of like significant other. And so I think getting to a place where we're learning how to be vulnerable and learning how to best support each other when the other one is going through something, whether it's related to, us as a relationship or if it's external, figuring out what are the best ways that we can be there for the other person. So both long distance and just supporting each other in the best way has kind of been a process for us to figure out what the other person needs and how to just best be there for the other one.
Yeah, so I would definitely like to second everything Juhi has just got done saying. Like, long distance can definitely be tough. It's hard to look at other people's relationships and they got them right next to each other. I'm like, man, I wish he was right here, you know? And when I think that, I'm like, okay, I'll start looking at these plane tickets and how can I get it back over there? So definitely agree there. And she's definitely also correct in regards to supporting each other. Me and her always tell each other this all the time. We're very similar in a lot of ways, but we're also very different in certain ways. And like one of them being what she just got done illustrating is that for us, in regards to being supported, it can be very different. And so I definitely feel like we have grown to, start to understand how each other want to be supported, but it's definitely taken time and it's definitely been a process, but it's all about the journey.
Perfect. That's great. Well, not the challenges, but that you know what they are and are working towards communication. How about Seyoon and Elise?
I'm gonna let it ladies first.
Oh my gosh, I'm blushing. Not really. Don't tell him that. But
Tim, look at what you're doing, man.
But I also agree with what you guys said about like communication and well, I had this really bad mindset. This is my first relationship actually. Like real, not just crushes on people, but I guess I had this bad expectation that you would not get into arguments in a good relationship, and boy, was I wrong. But anyways, I think for me, an unexpected relationship moment was right after we came back from Washington seminar. I got mono and I was basically bedridden for a whole month. And I don't get sick. Neither of us get sick that often. So this was going to be a journey, is what I thought. I'm never sick. I was miserable. And so when you're not feeling well, everything else just throws you off your game. So I had moments like one, I was in my dorm and we were going to bed because he came to visit. And then in the middle of the night, I woke up and I told him, "Can he sleep on the floor?" I said, "Can you sleep on the floor?" And he almost left my dorm because he was really confused. It was unexpected out of me.
Well, you woke me up.
I did wake you up in the middle of the night. I don't remember what time it was. And I kicked you out of my bed. Well, I asked if I could kick you out of my bed. That sounds really bad. Like, I didn't physically push him off my bed. I just shook him. I said, "Can you get off the bed and sleep on the floor?" Don't know why I did it. But I learned how I react to things sometimes if I don't think things through, which we've had moments like that before. So I guess that's one thing unexpected that I've learned about myself and working on ways so I don't just say sporadic things without thinking.
I second what my boy Tim said here, it's a constant journey. We never get anything. There's no right or wrong answer, especially in the context of being a couple. I'm very much still learning, but one of the unexpected thing for me was just sort of sheer turn of events that we really both have experienced. The last April, I've experienced the loss of my grandmother, and then just the stage of grief is always it can be really challenging, and going through those really down moments in the new union as a couple, we've learned a lot about how I react in points of sadness and grief, but also how we can express that and communicate that, just telling each other what you need from each other, but also telling her here, I need this, I need some time. I think that's been a very important part of that is as we go through the ups and downs in our personal lives, if anybody you're gonna share those kind of things is gonna be our partner. So, finding ways to be open about that, and then not only you opening up and sharing out your feelings, but doing so in a way that is also healthy, and checking in with your partner saying, hey, are you I want to talk about this and this. Are you in a headspace to do that? Because she's taking 16 credit courses right now, so I want to be conscious of her academic workload. And I work full time now, so I've certainly navigated that transition from being a student life now into a professional world.
That's awesome. I'm glad that you all have found ways to work through it. It seems like you two have a very good understanding of each other. But unfortunately, sometimes people don't have a very good understanding of us as blind individuals. So I wanted to ask if you guys have dealt with any public situations or misconceptions. For example, and I've experienced this a lot with my sighted partner. Sometimes people will talk to him instead of me, which is really frustrating, right? Because he's like, you're the one who is more well-spoken. I don't know why they think that I got this. So I wanted to ask what you guys' experiences were with navigating those really uncomfortable situations. And we can start with Tim and Juhi.
Sure, I'd say so. Both of us are blind, so we don't necessarily go through some of the misconceptions if you do have a sighted partner. I'd say because both of us have been, I think, through training programs and have learned how to be independent and use some of our blindness skills, luckily, like those things come in handy for both of us. I think a lot of it is just understanding each other, and so the ways of like navigating and things like that, we both are like, okay, let's try this, let's try that. So it's a lot of working through things together, but we haven't dealt with too many misconceptions. I think a lot of it is just dealing with classic societal like interactions with people just being a blind person. But Tim, if you have like a different perspective or something to add on to that, go for it.
Yeah, so I don't know if I've ever told you about this situation, Juhi, but there is a time, and I only remember this just now as you asked the question earlier, right? So there was one time where it was a partner of one of Juhi's friends was genuinely just asking, like, how do me and Juhi like work as a relationship, right? And I was just like very confused. I was like, what do you mean, how do we work? He's like, well, you guys are both blind. How do you guys like make it work? I was like, I mean, we just do. Like, I don't know what to tell you, man. But it was just one of those things where I just had to explain to him. I was like, yeah, I mean, we want to go somewhere, we just go, I mean, if we want to go to somewhere to eat, we figure it out, figure out the travel route, and we do it. And eventually, I mean, by the end of the conversation, like, he definitely knew what was up. It's just, I mean, but again, like, Juhi's right. Like, we don't really go through that many things. I mean, I definitely can imagine where blind couples would go through that, where it's like, oh, how are you guys outside right now? Like, where is your caregiver or something like that? But I feel like we've definitely been lucky enough to like not go through that. Except like for honestly that one occasion I'm thinking of, that would be the most uncomfortable thing in regards to how someone was particularly viewing us, in my personal opinion.
I'm really glad that you two have been spared from the discomfort of dealing with those situations. But also, like, I feel like that's such a genuine question. Like, how do you two work? I get that with my partners. Like, well, how do you know? It's always fun to answer those questions, but it is a little frustrating. How about Anneliese and Seyoon? Have you two had your fair share of challenges in this, or how did
Well,
that?
actually, this is just me at my job, but I just had this kind of experience happen where I work at this preschool and my mom also works there. She's the secretary, but we were they have this indoor gym for all the little kids. And in preschools, there's usually two teachers. There's like the lead teacher and then the assistant, and I was being the assistant teacher. So the lead teacher, she said, so your mom told me that your boyfriend is blind. And I said, yeah. And then we went on talking about, I showed photos of us and I talked about our relationship a little. I told her about his job and how he's helping other people with visual impairments get do transitions in life and find jobs eventually if that's what they're looking for. And she said, yeah, I know, because most jobs require you to see things to do them. And I was like, it was a WTF moment. And I said, I had to like pause and think, she did not just say that. It ticked me off because in my head, it's like, no, there's so much assistive technology that people use. I even use on my computer, I have a bad time with reading and staying focused. So I have an accommodation where it reads the book to me and I can follow along. So it's not even just people with visual impairment. So I just wanted to go off at her, which would not have been appropriate, I know, but it just set me on the edge. How did you feel when I told you that?
You know, this is an example where I'm going to say that Anneliese is blind at heart. So
Hey.
I'm gonna revisit that famous line of many Federation leaders who have said that their partner is very much a Federation blind at heart. So I'm gonna echo that sentiment for all y'all listeners because she really does have a mindset of blind people can do anything perspective, very empowering. So thank you.
And the fact that I've run into things because I haven't seen it in front of me, so that sense too.
And this is why I wonder how she's behind the wheel sometimes. But anyhow,
We don't judge. We listen and we don't judge.
real briefly, certainly that statement had been a little bit, it got me shaken up, but also like I'm used to, as blind people, we're used to sometimes hearing those low expectations that the society presents. But really kind of like what she had said, we're interracial couple. So we both bring a lot of diversity into our equation and continuing to find ways to sort of challenge those mixed perceptions. If at a waitress or waiter hands the bill and I don't realize it, certainly she can help manage some of my blindness, but also she's also very good about letting me do what I need to do as far as being successful, as far as traveling and things like that too.
And the irony in that is that you literally just answered a question I was going to ask further down the line. So thank you very much. So we're just going to write that one off and go right down the line. So we're going to ask two more questions. How do you navigate advocacy in the sense of knowing when to jump in with your partner versus to when to let them handle it? And I'm going to start with Seyoon and Anneliese.
I've said this previously, but being in an interracial couple, I think that allows us to really challenge ourselves and think outside the box as far as advocacy. I'm certainly very fortunate to be with a partner who doesn't have those societal low expectations, so to speak, but then also believes in blind people to achieve a lot of the same things. Certainly, she asks a lot of questions about it, and I take the time to explain that.
Tim and Juhi, do you have any thoughts? How do you guys handle advocacy and advocating for each other versus leaving it be and just this is their battle to fight?
I think we definitely both recognize most definitely that we are a unit, we are a team. So usually if we're ever being mentioned to someone, like one of us are, it's usually in like a positive sense. There's not really any need to like jump in for one another or like have to be like, hey, like, I don't think we've ever really felt a need to advocate. Besides that situation I was mentioning earlier, where I was just kind of explaining to someone who was just ignorant, just wanted to know more about it, right? I was just trying to explain to them like how we go about our business, right? But like usually from what I understand, like we don't really need to like I know if it ever comes to that, we can definitely bat for each other if one of us isn't in the room or isn't even in the state for that matter, But I can't really recall a time where we've really had to do that. So yeah, but I know we're definitely willing and able to do it if when that time comes.
I mean, seconding what Tim said, I think the only times we might advocate for the other person is in situations where the other person isn't there. So, like if we are facing things like Selene was saying, where, you have, and what Anneliese experienced, where you're talking to someone about your partner and they're like, wait, he's also blind? And then that's when you kind of come into that advocacy perspective, which I think all of us are used to being blind ourselves. It's all you're doing is advocating for the other person in the same way you would yourself. But when both of us are in the same room, if someone is doing something ignorant or due to misperceptions, they're treating the other person in a certain way because of their blindness in that moment. I think both of us just trust that the other one is going to handle it in the way that they would like to, and if they're uncomfortable or if they want help, then they're just going to tap the other person's shoulder and be like, yo, I can't deal with this. Can you address this person? So I think in those moments, we definitely let the person who's dealing with it deal with it in their own way, and know that, if they want us to step in, they'll let us know, and we just have that relationship. But yeah, so I think we'd only advocate for the other person if the other person isn't in the room and we feel a need to kind of be defending or advocating or educating.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, the tap on the shoulder thing, tag, you're it.
Yeah,
I can't deal with this right now.
We have a whole code of holding hands, and there's a code of okay, if I squeeze this many times, you step in because I'm done. So
yeah, I'm officially checking out, y'all. All right, thank you guys so much for being here and taking the time to answer our questions. I just have one more, and that is, what advice would you give to listeners dating in college and beyond? And I'm going to start with Tim and Juhi.
If I was to give some advice, I would first of all say patience. It is definitely, I would assume no one is trying to date themselves, right? You might think to yourself, hey, why aren't they seeing my side? This is so simple in my head. I feel like people have different viewpoints on things, right? And you have to come to understand each other's viewpoints, right? And that could take time. And it's fine that can take time. You're not going to always be on the same page, which is okay. And honestly, that can lead to growth. I definitely feel like in the world we live in now, we live in a world with instant gratification, right? And that isn't always a relationship. It doesn't need to be, at least in my opinion. It's a process. And again, when you go on that journey and eventually get to that destination, it's all the more better. It's such a good feeling when you can go through that process with someone and just keep moving forward together. So definitely patience and just understanding that there are going to be differences and you're going to have to work and listen, understand the other person. And that's okay.
That's some sage words of advice right there. Juhi, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, well, one, seconding that feature of, everyone's different and learning how to best kind of, work with the person that you're dating. I'd say one other one that's super quick, and then another one that's a little bit longer. But the super quick one is, don't force yourself to be in a relationship just because, people expect you to be in one. I think that's unrelated to dating blind people or sighted people, but culturally or societally, there's always an expectation that you should be in a relationship. And I think, don't let that, dictate your decision whether to date. If you want to be single, and there's not a problem with that. But then the last thing I would say is, from personal experience, if you have been in relationships before, try your hardest not to let that dictate your behavior or, fears going into a new relationship. Definitely a hypocrite if I was to say that I don't deal with that at all and that I'm totally fixed from that process. But there are often times where, I have scarring from past relationships, and I realize that, some of my behaviors or my assumptions on how things are going to be are because of the way that previous relationships were. And that's been my own kind of process that Tim has been helping me with, is realizing, he's not previous partners I've dated, or our relationship is not going to be, the exact same as previous things. And in ways that I'm fearful of, it doesn't mean that it's going to happen in the same way. So making sure that you're just trying to be as open as possible to the new relationship, and trying not to bring, those scars or those fears from past ones into the new one.
Honestly, as someone who also deals with that, not to start speaking from panelist position, but as someone who deals with that, that's really good advice. That's all I have to say. All right. Seyoon and Anneliese, what do you have for us?
Okay, so I'm gonna go first, which is kind of funny because I'm not even the blind one in this relationship. But I think it's just something I've learned that after we got together, because I never really expected to be with a blind person. But one of the biggest things for me, and I think you would agree, is having an open mind is something that I have learned, and I would tell people, don't let your blindness stop you from putting yourself out there. Be yourself. You're just like everyone else. I feel like we're all the same people, and We deserve to have all the same opportunities, and just don't be afraid to try new things. That's what you did, kind of. I think just put yourself out there and don't just be afraid. I know I'm repeating myself a lot. Okay, you go. I don't know what to say.
You're good.
I just want to go back to the point that Juhi had said, and I was nodding my head the entire time. Having a fresh set of perspectives. I've also had been in previous relationship, and my, Anneliese is not my former partner, so having a fresh set of perspectives is so important. So I just want to re-stress that one more time. But I think to the point that Anneliese had mentioned is it's important to put ourselves out there if that's the lifestyle you're seeking. I wouldn't have put myself on Hinge and would have not made that profile and have came across her. If you are not willing to put yourself out there, then we certainly would have not met. So it can do some really cool things, and don't feel discouraged. I feel like there are so many unique attributes or personality or character things that you may bring to the table, and don't be afraid to have those conversations that like we had first, and find out when the right time is for you to disclose if you're seeking long term. Or when you meet, people are more curious about blindness than anything. So just go in with an open mind and an open heart. I will say the other thing is there are more things that we have more in common than the things that differ. But I think the other piece of it is too, if you're especially in for the long haul, you want to think about, you want to have really, a lot of, we have sure had a fair share of a lot of conversations, not only just like surface level things, maybe some things that we like enjoy doing or going to, or the music we like to listen to, but like also the perspective on the world and some of those more things, if you've been, that feels right to you again. So that would be my piece of advice.
I don't know about but I'm stealing a lot of this for myself.
Yeah, I'm feverishly taking notes.
Throw
over
that
here.
down.
Yeah, no. Very much taking notes over here. Well, thank you so much, guys. It's been a pleasure to talk to you and to hear your stories and to take your advice. And I really think that this has been a fantastic episode, and there's a lot that folks can learn from this. So thank you guys so much for being here and for taking the time to talk to us.
This podcast was brought to you by the National Association of Blind Students, a proud division of the National Federation of the Blind.
This show was hosted by Noah Carver and Selene Monjaraz. It was produced by Noah Carver, Naudia Graham, Selene Monjaraz, Akliesia Teshome, and Patrick Wilson. Our editors for this episode were Naudia Graham, Manahil Jafri, and Patrick Wilson. Our NABS board rep is Manahil Jafri. Find links to our website, social media, join our email list, and our WhatsApp community, all from our new Linktree at linktr.ee/NABSlink. As always, thanks for listening to the NABS Now podcast. We hope you'll join us in April for another episode.